everybody. Welcome to the DePINed podcast. I'm your host, Tom Trowbridge. Thrilled to have Micha here, founder of Nodle, which has been around for a while and has been developing some pretty interesting technology with regard to kind of a traditional, what we think of as traditional, at least I do, depin, which is really crowdsourced infrastructure from the very beginning, and doing it from, and I think still and continuously doing it from crowdsource retail devices, which I think is pretty interesting. And a lot of people view that as kind of a core depin criteria. So with that, I want to go straight into Micha. And Micha, how I generally start these things is asking people how you define depin. And you've been doing this for a while, and I think you started before when we first met. Depin didn't exist as a term. And now you are, right in the middle of the sector that you predated. So how do you think about the term depin? How do you think about the sector?
Well, first, thank you, Tom, for having me on the podcast. So depin is the way I would define it is when you have a group of people who own a device that has value and basically decide to share the resources of that device to build an infrastructure. And in the case of Nodle, we early on saw the power of what we call the smartphone infrastructure. And we thought it would be great to actually build a project that could gather these resources, make them available, and enable enterprise developers to leverage resources of millions of smartphones at the same time.
Well, it's terrific. I mean, and just on the depin definition, I kind of hammer this home, but I'm trying to spread it. So I think I agree with you violently, but I will add a couple pieces to it and tell me if you agree. Crowdsourced physical infrastructure bound together into a network by a common software layer, secure and incented by crypto economics.
Absolutely. You make a great point. So when you share these resources and you participate into a protocol, basically you get paid for sharing these resources. You get compensated. And when you join, for example, with the Nodle wallet, you can run the process on your phone and you're going to be paid by the system for participating.
Well, fantastic. So back up for a second and tell us more about Nodle, because you've kind of given a piece here and a piece there, but the smartphone network, explain kind of what it is, how it works, what you built.
So we've built this network with a first application in mind, and you can actually leverage the network for many other things. The first application we built was for leveraging people's radios and more specifically Bluetooth in smartphones for locating assets. So today you have insurance company, fintech companies who use people's smartphones to locate vehicles like cars or motorcycles. And people get paid actually for participating in this network. The second big application we released recently is for authenticating content, so crowdsourcing user-generated content. And if you go on the Nodle app, you will see you can start to participate in other missions. We have actually active a mission on iOS with Massive, where you can share resources off your phone to participate in an AI mission. We announced today another one with Accurast. Again, you will be able to share computing resources for your smartphones to participate and enable basically AI computing at scale.
So I still want to dig into that into a little bit more detail. So you basically are crowdsourcing data that is captured on the smartphones. And so that data can encompass a variety of things. That data could be location, or it could be validation of other types of information. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. So in the first use case with the location of assets, if you walk by one of the cars from this insurance company, basically your phone you don't need to do anything. The process just needs to run on your phone, and automatically your phone will capture the identity of the vehicle, tag it with time, location, and send it directly to the insurance company.
Super interesting. Okay, and then there's other ones you mentioned, which is, I think we even spoke about this a long time ago, but about the validating events or other kind of occurrences that were happening that you could validate.
So you can indeed use this network to prove a location. So you can prove that you were participating at a certain event at a given place. We haven't. We did that for an event in Brazil during Blockchain Rio. But since then, we haven't launched any application that basically enable it. But that's the kind of thing that you can do with this network, especially with a location-based network like the Nodle network.
Fascinating. Now tell us about your background. What drove you and led you to this?
I've been in crypto and looking at crypto for a long time. I was mining Bitcoin, and my team was mining Bitcoin back in 2012 when we had offices in the middle of the bay on Treasure Island in a previous company I formed and founded. And then we at that time we were doing mesh networking on mobile, so enabling people to share bandwidth from their phone with other people or other devices for free. We used at that time the protocol for a messaging app that got widely adopted that was called FireChat, so that will enable people to send messages when there is no internet access. And during one specific event when the app was leveraged really at scale, it was 500,000 people who installed the app in a week in the city of Hong Kong to organize and coordinate the Umbrella movement. I don't know if you remember that event in 2014.
The Umbrella movement, for sure.
And so everywhere I was going, I was having messages on my phone, and I was there actually when it happened. So lucky to be there at the same time this thing was happening. And everywhere I was going, basically I was having messages, FireChat user nearby. And it was a dream when we started to build this, because till you realize actually it's really working at scale. And now you have hundreds of thousands of people with the app and be able to actually exchange messages and becoming the infrastructure that was supporting the exchange of these messages. And that's, I would say, how the idea sparked. And from there, I started to think.
And back up just one question on those messages. Also, those I'm guessing were encrypted and kind of untraceable and unblockable. Is that also correct?
They were unblockable. There were some form of encryption, the system kept on evolving after that. But really, what was the main learning was, well, it would be great if we can incentivize people to maintain a node that could be leveraged for many applications on their phone and get paid for it. And that's how basically the original idea from Nodle sparked. And since then we've grown the network with Nodle. We have basically more than 100,000 people every day active on the app. It's more than 1 million people who are holding the token today. And we have real life application that are using this network. And the latest one, which is super interesting, and I would like to share it with you today, which is, I think, very timely, is actually a way to authenticate user-generated content, and more specifically photos and videos, and prove they are real. Because there is a big thing happening this year, 50 countries going under elections. So, and with the generative AI that already generated in volume more than 150 years of photography online, is becoming, and is going to become more and more difficult to know what is real online. So we are now leveraging the network as a way to prove the authenticity of media content like photos and videos. And we launched a new app called the Click app, clickapp.com, where you can take a photo and actually prove it's real and share it on socials and media.
And how does that work?
Well, there are many things. So the network that has been built can at some point serve like digital witnesses. So if you take a photo or a video in a location, you will be able to eventually, if someone was there, to have digital witnesses that will confirm that you were really there in that location, taking that photo at that time and location. And when it comes to proving authenticity of media, you need a few things. You need proof of time, and blockchain is fantastic for that, to prove the time. You need a proof of location, and you also need to know the provenance of the photo, how it has been generated. So we, over the years, by building this network, which is dynamic, and we had to face a lot of hacks. and we are still facing some hacks from time to time. So we had to really create a secure, trusted environment on the mobile phone. So if you try to take a photo and modify any of the signals from the camera, or basically the app will shut down and won't work. You cannot run it. That's why into a developer mode, for example. And so we launched this new app, and we leverage now this network for enabling user-generated content that can be authenticated. And we think it's very important. So we are pushing this on the network. It's for, I would say, most important app today on this network after the location of assets.
And so, just so I'm clear, someone would have Nodle, the protocol, installed on their phone, or maybe they would download this particular photo authentication app, and through this app they would take a picture. They would then be authenticated, and then when they upload that picture, presumably there's some watermark, stamp, something on it that certifies its authenticity.
So it's more than that. So we use a content provenance protocol that has now reached maturity. It's been developed for years by the Linux Foundation, Adobe. It's called C2PA. So when you take a photo or a video, we capture all the metadata of that photo or that video, and we sign that metadata with the media after when you decide to sign it. Then this media is sent onto IPFS, so on the decentralized internet. And then a hash of the media is recorded on chain with a link to the media. So when you share the link to your photo or to your video on any social or messaging, so first it creates a preview. So it's really well done. You have a preview. And even if you don't have the app and you click on the photo or the video, you will arrive on a page that shows you the record on chain, all the metadata that has been recorded with that media. So you have a way to prove in the future that it's actually the image that was recorded or the video recorded at the time, and it's the original. So if you have a system, you can verify. If you have the same photo or video and you want to make sure it's the original, well, you can drag and drop it into the web page, and it will verify if it matches the hash recorded on chain. So it's pretty powerful, and we think it's going to be necessary to use more and more these tools. There is a famous venture capitalist. So Fred Wilson started to use it on Farcaster. He posted his first photo on Farcaster, and Million Square Venture defined the category as deep reels. So a deep reel is basically the inversion of a deep fake. And so you assume everything you will see on the internet is completely fake, and that you actually need to prove the realness of anything now you share on the internet. And that's what you can do with the Click app. Yeah.
And so, I mean, great. The default is things are fake unless they're a deep reel. That's where we're effectively going to go with this, I guess. But I just want to get into one more second. Like, am I taking the picture with my iPhone camera directly, or I'm taking the picture through the app? And if I am through the app, what's it called? Or that's the only piece I'm not grasping, the actual mechanics of me doing it and participating.
So you raise a good point. So today you need to take the photo with the app or the video with the app.
And the app is called?
clickapp.com. And you can install it on iOS or Android. CLICK app.
And so I'm clear, this is an app you develop, but that uses the Nodle protocol. So you basically built the best or most obvious use case for your own protocol.
So you raise a good point. When it comes to decentralized infrastructure like DePIN, you always need to have killer applications to grow this network.
Of course.
We started with the location-based service, and it worked. I mean, since the token is listed, we add basically 3,000 to 4,000 people a day with the wallet app. So it's working, but we need something bigger to go to the next level, have tens of millions and potentially hundreds of millions of phones with basically this node running. And the use case of authenticating photos resonated a lot. It's very timely. GenAI, basically the convergence of the amount of and volume of content generated with GenAI, the maturity of provenance protocol, and also now the ability to scale really blockchains. I think it's a very timely to do this. And we think it would be one of the killer use cases on the infrastructure. Absolutely.
Super interesting. Listen, I mean, I'll phrase it to you the other way. if you're a DePIN protocol and you're not building one of the first major use cases on your protocol, I think you're making a mistake. So I go back to forget about DePIN. I mean, look at Elon Musk and SpaceX and Starlink, right? He became his first big customer with Starlink. So which is a whole massive business on its own. So regardless, and who's going to know how to use your protocol better than you, right? So I'm hugely supportive of that, and I think projects that don't do that are going to probably make a mistake. But back to the point, it's still you download this app, you take the picture via the app, but it sounded like there's other developments coming as well.
Well, so today you take a photo or video, you can share it, and
via the app.
Via the app. What's amazing is you start to see people. You don't need to be that familiar with Web3 protocols or Web3 apps. Actually, it works like a traditional app. So you don't even have to create an account. The app does it for you. But we saw people starting to tip other people because you have a wallet attached to it. So some people start to tip the photos of users they like. So these are the kind of things we want to bring in the future, like the possibility to leave a comment to this media content, the possibility to tip it, the possibility even to collect it if the user accepts that you can reproduce and have an NFT of that photo or that video. Then will have the possibility to mint it. If it's a media agency, they would have the possibility, if you agree, basically to acquire that media directly from you. So it opens up a lot of possibilities on how to actually interact with media content that has been generated by any one of us. I mean, the big revolution here is when it comes to using media contents for citizen journalism, for example, or traditional journalism, traditional publication. They would either have their own photographers or they would go through media agencies that can embed photographers. With this system and infrastructure, now you can trust photos and video from anyone with a smartphone. So it means you have a photo or video taken by any of the 8 billion people that have a smartphone. And now you can trust that it basically it is true.
Super interesting. So it leads to my next question, which is what exists today, or why is this possible now and it wasn't possible 3 years ago, 5 years ago? It sounds like it's a combination of smartphone technology. It's also a combination of the protocol you guys developed, but there may be other elements in it as well that make this, that make now pretty much the only time up until now that this would have been a possible technology to deploy at scale.
So many elements when it comes to the authentication of contents. So like I mentioned, you have provenance protocols that are mature, like C2PA. Blockchains are scalable, and then you have the timing. I mean, we live in a time where you can create anything using an AI model, and this is flooding the internet. So and then in addition, especially this year, you have 50 countries going under elections. So it's 2 billion people going to the polls. So you have, events that are happening all over the globe with political events, where usually you see a spark of actually fake content or misinformation being broadcasted or distributed on the internet. So there's really a need to actually push more and more content that is authenticated. And I think this explains why this now and not before. And then you had to develop also the technology to be able to make sure that the photo you take, basically the signals is original. You need to be able to prove the location, like I mentioned. So the bigger our network grows, the more we will be able with certainty to prove locations of basically these events when someone takes a photo or a video. And it takes time. We've been at this for 7 years.
Wow. Yes.
And I would say the fact that also the token was listed helped develop the network, and that only happened 2 years ago.
But And you answered my question two different ways, because you mentioned a lot about the demand side of what you're doing, and the fakes and the elections drive the demand for what you're doing. And I grasp that for sure. This is a unique time. Again, 5 years ago, we were less worried about deep fakes. Now we certainly are with AI. So the demand timing is perfect. I hadn't even thought about that, but I was thinking more about the supply side, the technology side. And that is what I'm also interested. That seems like that's also, to your point, uniquely capable, very recently, to be able to create what you've created. Is that accurate also?
Yes, I mean it's accurate. We even if we had the vision of this specific use case, I don't think we ever decided to work and put the energy and the effort to get it out before just started to think really about it a year ago. Because we saw what was going to happen. We also get to know provenance protocol, so we realized, wow, this may be the time. So that's why.
Fascinating. Well, listen, you mentioned listing the token 2 years ago. Tell us about, and let's go into detail on how the token economics work, whether it's for this app or for the protocol overall, however you kind of want to attack it.
So we have a flywheel where the way we look at this flywheel is that we think that the more the network grows, so the more participants come onto the network with the Nodle wallet app or the Click app, basically the bigger is the infrastructure, and the more applications can be enabled as the network grows. So you have this network effect that actually as it continues to grow, will enable more and more applications and people to think about things they can do by interacting with this very large community and this decentralized infrastructure of smartphones. The way it works is where we want to go is we want people and developers at some point to develop what we call smart missions. And we see smart missions that the equivalent of smart contract, I would say, in the more traditional blockchain space, but for the mobile platform. And the smart mission will be a developer or an enterprise basically locking and buying Nodle tokens to reward users to do something or to share resources from their phones. So today, if you go on the Nodle wallet, you will see you can start to take other missions than the sharing of location and your Bluetooth radio. You can start to participate in missions to actually share resources that can serve AI models. And you get paid for that. So that's one example of the first smart missions. But in the context of photos and videos, it could be that a media agency or a publication decides to crowdsource photos or videos from a specific event. And in that case, they would reward people who can bring photos or videos from, for example, just a game at the stadium. And that could be another kind of missions.
But and a grasp that's the easiest piece to understand, because they're just buying content from your users, right?
Absolutely.
But that doesn't need your token necessarily. They could pay in presumably however they wanted to, right?
So I think the blockchain infrastructure and the fact that every piece of media is linked to a wallet changes everything. Like I said, we start to see users tipping other users for their content. They can do that because there are the railways of the blockchain, and basically because every user behind a photo or a video also has a wallet and ownership of that content. So yeah, it's what makes it possible.
But fair enough. But help me understand the Nodle token and exactly how that works in this infrastructure, because I understand the Quest piece, but where do those tokens come from if people enter into one of those? How does that generation work? How does it how does that ecosystem work?
So there are two aspects. There are the tokens that you can purchase to, like I mentioned, to create a smart mission and basically reward users for performing a certain task or sharing resources. You also have the system who is generating tokens, and these tokens are shared within the community for performing the work of sharing location and access to their Bluetooth. And these tokens get generated by the system. So it's and then every day you have a certain amount of token, it corresponds to a curve, and these tokens are split among the people who participate.
Fair enough. So, and that token, it's an emission And is that emission fixed? Does that change? Is it, you said according to a curve. So is that curve like a halving curve that exists out over 10 years or whatever it is?
Today it's an S curve, and there is a max supply. And we are going to propose to the community to actually remove the max supply and keep an inflation with a halving curve. So that's a change that's going to be submitted to the community.
And so then the tokens that are emitted every epoch, every day, whatever it is, those then are split equally among all app holders, or no only
based on your activity and how active is the process on your phone and the locations where you go. Like if you move and the process is active, you have more chances to earn the token today.
Okay, so basically an algorithm determines the value you're adding to the network, and that value is more about your motion, I suppose, in relevant environments. Like if you're running around, the middle of Montana, it may not be as valuable as if you're moving around LA or New York. Is that also fair?
That's fair. And there is another app we publish where you can, if you have old smartphones, recycle them into hotspots. So you can have them also participate.
Okay. So, and then that token you're earning. So basically people can understand and know what is more valuable, what's less valuable. And so you're selecting effectively for smartphone holders in presumably, high GDP kind of areas, regions, MSAs, whatever.
Well, there is this, but there is also where the demand is for the network. So today, for example, referring to GDPs, the latest big deployment was in Uganda. It's a fintech company. They finance motorcycles for taxis, and they also finance smartphones. So they deployed using our SDK the network on their smartphones, and they locate their motorcycles using the network. But so there they're also paying for the service, so there's demand there. And what was interesting in this country specifically is they were able to deploy a network in a matter of a month. So the whole country has been covered with a wireless network using people's smartphone in a matter of months. And because people heard about the service and the network behind their own app, they started to hear, oh, it's Nodle. So people now start to install the wallet also. So we have more people contributing and joining the network.
Wow.
Because they
to cover
the token as well. Yeah.
But so to cover Uganda, I mean, as you mentioned, so how many downloads that? How many users is that?
It's more than 300,000, I think.
Wow, so that's like a third. You mentioned 1 million downloads. That's a third of your market is in Uganda. Shocking.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, they're not always all active. So we have around 800,000, I think, monthly active. Every day, 130,000 just on the wallet. And then if you add the SDK participants, then it probably goes to over 200,000.
Super. All right, it's still a big percentage there, which whether it's 15%, whatever, it's still not intuitive, which is terrific to see. And then, so does that mean that people there are earning, the same level or more rewards than they might be in the US or Europe or anywhere else?
The next big operation for the location of assets is in Europe and France with an car insurance company. Yeah, I mean, the incentives can be higher in these geographies.
And so if you're just a person, you download this, you're in France or you're in, Uganda, I mean, how much, it clearly doesn't take any extra effort. So it's pretty marginal, but how much do you expect people to earn? And I don't know if you quantify it in dollars or in your token and over a week, a month, a year, if you're on average, like what do people think?
So it depends a lot on the price of the token, but I would say today an active user can make between $5 to $10. But it's not that you have to do much.
No, you do nothing. It's just pure incremental revenue. No, I get it. It's just nothing.
But if you hold on the token and you see this network, who is today the largest decentralized physical infrastructure, by the way, we are the largest DePIN by number of participating devices. It's more than 50% of all the DePIN project combined, the whole blockchain ecosystem. We represent almost 50% of all in terms of participating devices today.
But Helium has multiple millions.
No, Helium in terms of active devices is far behind us. So if you look at IoTex, who released actually the IoTex scan, you can see the DePIN project that are indexed in there. And when you look at participating device and active devices, you will realize that actually we are much bigger than Helium in terms of participating devices.
That is interesting because you're saying effectively Helium is sold or people have bought a million devices, whatever, but a lot of them are offline is effectively the implication there.
Absolutely. And but it's normal. I mean, we don't ask people to buy an additional device. Everyone has a smartphone. So you would expect that it's an easier, I would say, less friction and a better way to spread adoption.
Super interesting. Well, that is, and so just to back up, there's an inflation. The inflation is on some S curve. There's going to be a change that at some point, but that inflation is paid to all the participants in the network, but weighted towards those that are providing the most economic benefit to the network, which is where there are use cases, and where they're in proximity to those use cases, adding value to those customers effectively.
Absolutely. But what is interesting, because it's a programmable network, is if you add other missions, like the one you are able to add for sharing resources for AI models, for example, then these are additional earnings that come on top of what you are making for the basic service in the network. So we think that at some point, especially with the token going up, it should reach the level where you will pay easily for your smartphone plan, and eventually you're going to start to actually make more money on top of it.
And so how does that, well, that's fascinating. So that means, back to your Uganda example, that company is paying, and how does that revenue then enter the network and enter into individuals?
It's a very good question. And today, so most corporations are not yet, I would say, ready to purchase token on the market, create their service. So the lab, so we run a lab, it's called Intergalactic Labs. And we basically provision sponsoring wallet for this specific organization with tokens, and the tokens basically get used for the network as the service gets used. So it's we kind of abstract, I would say, the Web3 element for these people, but as we progress, we think that more and more developers and companies will be directly interacting with the chain and the network.
But I don't see, if I say I want to put my car company, whatever, insurance company on Nodle, presumably I'm paying something to somebody. Is that a grant right now or not?
No, today you pay. So we did define a subscription fee. More often, it's a subscription fee for the location service, and then we basically provision majority of the amount you pay into tokens. So we sometimes purchase back tokens to the market for that, and then we put it into basically your wallet, the enterprise wallet or the company wallet.
Okay, so it goes, and then how does that go back to actual users, or does it not yet? That's a future change.
So some get distributed basically to the participants in the network. Some gets burned. So that's basically how the smart mission.
What is that a fixed amount? How do you said some? Is it a fixed amount, or is it after some expenses, or how do you define it?
In the new token economics, it's going to be a fixed amount of token for every smart mission that is burned. I think it's 5%, basically, of this token that get burned.
And the rest is distributed to everyone that was relevant
actively participating in the mission.
Absolutely. In the mission, okay, which is super interesting because that's also much more direct than a lot of DePIN protocols where it's divided among active users. And here you could have a ton of active users, but if back to Uganda, the guys who they pay you a subscription fee in Uganda, that's only going to go to the Uganda people that are actually participating in sourcing those scooters and bikes, or vice versa in the West
It's
Coast.
not going to go to someone who is in the US in that case.
Interesting. Super cool. Listen, that is definitely interesting. Well, as listen, you've been at this, I think you said 7-8 years. Tell us about what, obviously things never go as expected. Any advice for founders, any scars that you want to reveal, or you can kind of try to save people from experiences going forward?
Well, I think because it's when you stick to a project for such a long term, and you really have to believe in the vision that you have imagined at the beginning. So you need to be in it for the impact and the change and the satisfaction you have from seeing this vision unfold. Because we've been through a lot of highs and lows. I mean, I could talk for hours about all the events that happened since we started this project. But just when it comes to blockchain, we started on Stellar. Then we were making so many transactions that the foundation asked us to get out of the network. So we started to build our own blockchain using the Polkadot open source, basically. And then we decided to become a parachain. Then today we're probably the fastest growing project on Polkadot with Layer 1, and we realized that we needed to start to build on Ethereum, and because of what's possible with actually the rollups and ZK, we decided to move to Ethereum through a ZK rollup, and we chose ZK Sync for that. It's an amazing project. Super happy that we chose that ecosystem, and now we are starting to migrate people to that ecosystem. So, I mean, if you had told me at the beginning that we had to go through all these evolution from an infrastructure standpoint, I mean, I wouldn't have known.
I mean, and that's super frustrating. Listen, at Fluence, we're going through something similar right now, but you're focused on building your application, your technology, and the last thing you want to worry about is the underlying blockchain that you're working on. And you've had to spend a lot of time and resources, I'm guessing, in order to get that right as the technology underneath has evolved and matured. Frustrating. We're at Fluence, we're dealing with the exact same thing right now regarding kind of Ethereum layer 2. So I understand that the difficulty and how that can slow you down. It's definitely frustrating. But it's good to see you've made it out the other side, at least, right? I mean, that's terrific.
Well, I mean, over the years as an entrepreneur, I came up with a sentence, and I often like to remind it to my other peers entrepreneurs, especially the ones who are starting, is you have to adapt quickly and to be comfortable with the unknown. It's and if you can't be comfortable with the unknown, it's a very, very unpleasant, basically, path journey. So I came up with this sentence, which is victory is in the unknown. And I believe actually that because the unknown is where everything is possible. And so you just have to accept the situation like it is. And sometimes, it's difficult. And keep on building and believing in your vision and pushing.
Fair enough. That's I think everyone here can say that. And the other thing I'd say is that if you believe in something and you keep building, you could be wrong, and that happens all the time. But what also can happen is the whole market can come to you. And it sounds like that is what's happening here, where a whole sector you're now a legacy old school project in what's a brand new sector. So there's now a hot sector that you're in the middle of, and the market has come to you in terms of deep fakes being big, and the application for validation, verification on people's smartphones. So a whole bunch of things have converged now, which is you couldn't have predicted that either. On the upside, you couldn't have predicted that 7 years ago either. So exactly. You get, hopefully that's some terrific benefit as well.
Yeah, I mean, we are building for it, and we have a very good community. So we expect that will funnel and drive us more and more adoption. But it is a crypto project also. So it's true that all the cycles in the crypto also affect basically nonetheless the development of the product. And I think it's because it's still an early industry, and but as things mature, I think that will have less and less impact, and then real projects who are building things in the real world that leverage these technologies will be less and less impacted by the markets in general.
Fair enough. Yeah, I think that makes sense. I mean, I'll phrase it also something different. Someone, I think it was Ariel from HiveMapper made this comment on a previous podcast. He also, to take your point slightly differently, he said that if DePIN doesn't work, he thinks crypto doesn't go mainstream. So his view is much more extreme, which is that the DePIN is basically the best, clearest application for crypto, and that is what propels it into real world use. And if it doesn't work, then crypto outside of DeFi and Bitcoin is going to be challenged. I think that's an even more extreme version of what you're saying.
Well, I think I do believe blockchain and DeFi already have benefited and are going to have a fantastic influence on finance in general. But beyond that, yeah, if DePIN doesn't succeed, then what's going to happen? I totally agree. And it's very important it succeeds, because it's the only way to guarantee down the road infrastructure that can be resilient, that can actually protect users' privacy. And also, I think often underestimated is the economical benefit of having people sharing and building the infrastructure at the same time. I mean, it's fantastic, and it can become a real additional revenue, and I think we need that globally. We need new sources of revenues for people, and so that's why everyone should become part of this decentralized infrastructure. An easy example to explain that is if you look at Tesla. I think once Tesla realized their vision of enabling people to rent or share their car on the network, it will be basically a decentralized physical infrastructure for cars. That's
the vision. That's what they want to do, where you don't own cars anymore. I mean, that's, I think, the whole plan.
It makes so much sense. And with Nodle, we believe we can realize that also with a device that you all have in your pocket, which is the smartphone. And hopefully one day, I mean, it will pay for more than just your data plan. It will also actually brings you additional money, pay for your phone, and etc. And I don't think we are very far.
Super interesting. Well, tell us about, we think about the future. Then tell us about how big Nodle can be. Like, paint the picture of where you think this goes, given the applications you're talking about, the capabilities of smartphone. Like, how do deployments work? Where do we go with Nodle?
So it's a number game. So what I think is going to happen is at some point the token price will basically surge to a certain level that will unlock everything that we have been building for many years. And that when that happens, and we see it already in the curve of adoption, when the token does well, we see more people joining the network. So I think at some point we're going to go from 4,000 to 5,000 installs a day across the apps to tens of thousands of installs a day. Then it's going to grow to hundreds of thousands of installs a day. When you reach that number, it means you're adding tens of millions of people every year. And at some point, we will be on maybe if you have 8 billion smartphones, let's say we manage to be on 500 million to 1 billion smartphones. I mean, that changes the game. Now you have a whole infrastructure of smartphones that will be leveraged for location services, will be leveraged for user-generated content that you can trust, that will be leveraged for computing, for helping basically AI models, that will be leveraged for any kind of even action that a group of people is willing to take. And I think that's extremely powerful. And
so help us understand the scale, because you're talking about users download, but they download it. It's a chicken and egg, right? The more download, the more useful the network is, but the more economics, the more reason people will download it. So, where do you think the economics go or come from or generate? Like, for example, the authentication app, that may be the one that's big, or maybe it's the location services, but there needs to be, or is it just token price increases and people download the app because it's just more economic to own it now?
Well, look at the value that's created. So if when you start to reach $50 to $100 of value created by a smartphone participant, which I think we can reach that, and this is basically then happening on hundreds of millions of smartphones. Then you have an ecosystem that basically is just moving alone tens of billions of dollars. So it can be a massive scale. It can be a massive scale in terms of the value created, and I think there are things that can only be produced through leveraging smartphone resources, and so I believe a lot in this. It means that you will have, in the case of authentication, you will have probably new generation of media organization just leveraging people's content to actually create relevant news. It means you will have AI models that will basically just train on authenticated user-generated content. It means you will have models training on leveraging smartphone resources. Even people storing data on millions of smartphones, because now they have a very high capacity and there is availability of that network for enabling storage of data. So I think it's pretty huge where it can go.
Listen, I grasp the power of the smartphone increasing. I'm skeptical of the training AI models on smartphones. There are GPUs that are suited for that. I'm skeptical that you're going to be able to create a reasonable competitor to GPU cluster by using smartphones, but I don't think you have to. I think you can be a huge success irrespective of that.
I don't think we have to, and I don't think we want to compete with this. But you're going to have new ways also to access data. You're going to have new ways to generate data and making sure the data is authentic, and that can be leveraged by actually
100%.
AI models
and
organizations in particular.
Yeah, and I'm still trying to figure out how to quantify that, and that's the challenge, because what you're saying is huge, and I think that authentication is a very big is going to become more and more important, and sounds like you're kind of right in the middle of that. And user generated content becomes more important. Authentication, like all these things, are trending the right way. How to quantify value, that becomes a challenge, and that is that's kind of the fascinating part. Is I don't even know how to think about it, but I know the trends are all in the right direction.
Yeah, we know it's big. When we just look at authentication of content with the Click app, when we explain what we do, we think it's a more than 100 billion addressable market. And you can divide that between applications willing to use the technology to authenticate content in their own app. You can look at that for authentication happening for just documents as well. We announced last week a partnership with Vivendi. It's a public company, largest media group in Europe. They authenticate now their press releases using the Click app. So it's to prove actually their releases is coming from them and it's authentic. And then when it comes to content, you start to touch also to the whole social media space. So if you look at Facebook, Meta, it means that you're also going to tap into that market.
Yep, I get it. That is interesting. And I just want to make one more comment on this. I was just thinking back to your comment on the split of the revenue of 5% burn, effectively 95% distributed. What that basically means is token holders overall get a 5% dividend because it's a burn, right? So it's sort of like a 5% buyback of the revenue that is generated. And that makes sense, but it's interesting because you could have done it 50-50, which would have been far more overall for the token, less for the individual users. And or it's just that split is a very deliberate choice, I guess I would say.
Well, the reality is we're going to submit this to the community, and the community will vote, and we're going to have to iterate. We already iterated a lot, and even if I think now we are reaching a certain understanding on how the network behaves. It's going to be adjusted. It's going to be maybe different in 2 years from now. All these things are going to be adapted and submitted to the community to vote and decide on how they want the incentive to evolve, and the tokenomics to evolve around the token.
And that's going to be fascinating, because you wonder whether every community owner holds a token, but not every community member is going to be participating in X, quest, right? So are they going to vote because they really want? Like, I don't know. It's good. I can't wait to see the outcome of that. But that is going to be interesting. Well, tell us about. We talked about DePIN overall. Are there other projects that you like or follow or want to think are addressing anything interesting or relevant or important in the DePIN in kind of the overall market via DePIN?
Well, before I jump into the DePIN, my favorite project right now, I think, is what's happening around the ZK Sync ecosystem. I think it's a fantastic project that's going to enable actually more DePIN use cases. And in the DePIN, I like HiveMapper. I think they're executing extremely well. I like a new partner we are going to launch on our network. We announced today, which is Accurast. So they enable you to use the resources of your phone specifically for AI. And I also, because I come from the telco world, I used to operate telcos back when I was living in Europe. So I'm always looking at what Helium or XNet is doing, because I do believe that it's very important to decentralize the communication infrastructure. If we want resiliency down the road, if we want privacy, I think it's going to be very important to decentralize the communication infrastructure.
Yeah, privacy for sure, no doubt. Well, that's certainly interesting. Those are terrific projects, all of them, no doubt. And then early on, you mentioned, obviously, we are all within the larger crypto ecosystem. So you used to mine Bitcoin. Give us your prediction for Bitcoin price at the end of the year. And given we've just had a bit of a dip and it's now in the 60 range, it's curious kind of where you think we are end of the year.
Well, it's I'm very bullish on Bitcoin. I do take as a reference often the I would say the energy and the dynamism there was when during the last bull run, not this year, but when Bitcoin was at $69,000. And even with all the ETF, I haven't seen the same energy and dynamism, I would say, in the ecosystem and in general. So, but I do believe on the long-term value of Bitcoin, and so I do think it's going to keep on growing. And we are half of the year, so when you look what happened between the beginning of this one and today, it has done a nice journey. I wouldn't be surprised if Bitcoin ended up between 80 to 100K basically by the end of the year.
Fair enough. Yeah, I agree. I think 100K I'm be very surprised if it's not, but we will see. The thing that did surprise me is I would have thought the ETF flows would have made that happen much sooner, and I suspect it's the perps down the road that have impacted that a little bit. But we will see. How do people follow you, Micha? How do they follow Nodle? How do they get in touch? How do they participate? Give them all the kind of paths to do that.
So you can learn about Nodle network and infrastructure at nodle.com, nodle.com. You can also see the network live, network.nodle.com. You will have all the ways to install from there to install also from the Nodle website where to install the app, the Nodle wallet, to participate and start earning and take missions. You have a link also to the clickapp.com if you want to start generating authenticated content. I really recommend you do that. It's really a lot of fun to share on any social and messaging just the links of your content. And soon people will be able to interact with it. You will be able to make money with it. So I'm very bullish on this. If you want to follow me on Twitter, X, I am at Anthenor, Anthenor. And Nodle is at Nodle Network. And I started to create a profile also on Farcaster, on Tenor. I think I'm on Medium. I'm also on Tenor. On Paragraph.xyz, I'm also on Tenor. So yeah, I'm pretty.
We got a list. There is a lot of ways to stay in touch and to follow.
Absolutely, and then you can also find me on more traditional networks like LinkedIn if you want to exchange. Usually, I accept connections and happy to communicate with anyone.
Terrific. Well, appreciate it. And it sounds like that communication has helped build your community, which is an important thing in your network, no doubt, given you rely on it. And the thing I maybe close with this is that you see a lot of crypto projects, including Bitcoin, which you mentioned, that start from retail individual users, get institutionalized over time, right? You've seen that certainly Bitcoin. You've seen a lot of things. It sounds like where the Bitcoin miners that used to be people in basements are now publicly traded, purpose-built companies that are mining and mining Bitcoin. It sounds like, and that's going to happen with other, HiveMapper may move to fleets using it, right? So, but what you're doing is likely remaining a individual retail based DePIN project, and that is I think that you're not the only one like that, but that is still an interesting and valuable kind of component to this ecosystem.
I think what is unique is even if the network is built by individuals like you and me with their smartphones, the use cases and the usage of the network is now coming from real large enterprise. Like I said, we announced a Vivendi group using the network and the technology for authentication. Before that, we announced a big AI company called Hayden AI, also leveraging the infrastructure for the same reasons. The insurance company in Europe and France is called Rule. The company in Africa is called Watu. These are all very large companies now leveraging this infrastructure. So we start to have this flywheel with the supply, with consumers, enterprise, and developers on the other side that starts to work. Would love to.
Well, that's terrific. That's what you want, is this crowdsource infrastructure. You're basically providing a path for individual users to get Fortune 50 customers, more or less, right? I mean, and that's what's going on, which is terrific. The one question that Micha did not answer correctly was the projects he's interested in and thought were fascinating. He did not mention Fluence, and he did not mention, which is a grave error, which we will have to have him back to correct that.
I'll come back for that.
Exactly. But you can obviously follow Fluence on a bunch of ways, Fluence.network, but not quite as many as you can follow Nodle and Micha. But Micha, thank you for being on. I appreciate it. It's great to hear and learn about Nodle, and we're excited to have you back on in 6 months when you've made a bunch of milestones behind you and a bunch more users and deployment.
Would love to. Thank you, Tom. And I will do a deep dive in Fluence.
Great. Thank you so much for being on.